Dear Lord, we come before you this evening, thanking you for all the blessings that you give us, and we ask that you continue to bless our lives. We ask that you watch over our meeting this evening and guide our hearts and minds to make decisions that are in the best interest of our water system and its members. We ask that you watch over and protect our military men and women, our first responders, and all those who work to keep us safe and free and healthy every day. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Mike, can you lead us in prayer?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone to the September meeting of the Hollywood Water System Board of Directors. I'd like to announce that we do have quorum this evening. We have audio, video recorders in use. Please fill out the member forum sign-up sheet if you'd like to address the board. Open forum at the end of the meeting. And if you do have any items that you would like to speak to before the board takes a vote, if you raise your hand, be acknowledged, and go to the podium, we'll let you speak before the board votes on any particular agenda item. I'd also like to announce that candidate applications for being a member of the board of directors are available now, and they're due back by September 28th at 4 p.m. Early voting starts November 1st and ends December 22nd at 4 p.m. And the articles of incorporation vote is only available on election day. That's an in-person vote. It's not available for absentee voting. You have to be present on election day to vote on that issue. Please silence any cell phones. And we'll go ahead and move on to our meeting. Our first item on our agenda is employee recognition. We've got a couple of employees that have passed their licensing exams. So, Mr. Krigler, would you like to take that?
Yes, thank you. So we had two of Chris's employees at the wastewater plant there, Bobby Dobson and Brad Patterson, both passed their Class A wastewater operator license test. This is the highest level of certification for a wastewater operator in the state of Florida. So we just wanted to recognize them for taking the initiative to study for that and further their career. I think that brings us to 3 A operators at the plant, counting yourself. 4. Oh, 4. Okay, so there you go. Even better. So, yeah, just want to recognize those employees. It's certainly a talented staff we have out there.
Congratulations to Bobby and Brad on doing that. Next up is our approval of minutes and transcripts. We have our August 10th, 2023 open bylaw amendment workshop minutes, and we have our August 15th regular meeting minutes and transcripts. Can I get a motion to approve those as submitted?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Approval of new memberships. We have 285 new members. We have 281 canceled members, and we have 1 transfer. Can I get a motion to approve the membership report submitted?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the membership report? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. Unfinished business. Okay, we've got our board election coming up, and we need to work on getting a director appointed for our canvassing board. Do we have any directors that would like to volunteer to do that? That requires a meeting shortly after the first of the year. I'm not sure what the date is of that, but basically it's to assist staff with any election irregularities, make decisions on that. Does anyone like to volunteer for that?
So I'm assuming you're going to run again so that the president you would be.
I would not be able.
No.
I'd like to do it. I'd like to do it.
Anyone else want to put the name in the hat? All in favor of Darrell Lyncher being the appointed director to our canvassing committee, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries. All right, we have finance. Under finance, we finally have the results of our forensic audit. Mr. Krigler, do you want to start off with that?
Yeah, I'll just briefly introduce our team here and say a few words. So I believe it was in November of 22 that staff got 4 proposals for a forensic audit. The issue was tabled for the most part until I believe late spring, early summer this year. Then we selected Carr Riggs Ingram and went ahead and gave them notice to proceed with this item. So tonight we have Ben Kincaid and Donna Melillo here with us tonight. Ben's going to give a brief 10 to 15 minute presentation on his findings and then be available for questions afterwards. You want to go there? You want to? Okay. It's whatever you want, whatever you feel most comfortable.
Good evening. Again, my name is Ben Kincaid. I'm a partner at Carr Riggs and Ingram, and I lead the forensic investigations and dispute practice within the firm. With me, as Jeff mentioned, is Don Little, who assisted me. And we appreciate the opportunity to present our report to you. And as Jeff mentioned, we're going to give a brief presentation regarding the items identified in our report. As a way of brief background, we were engaged in respect to concerns regarding the former CEO, Dr. Dallas Peavy, and some issues that came to light regarding his background, and specifically to look at and address internal controls and those specifically related to the former CEO and that relate to his position. Our scope was, our review period was January 1st, 2022 through June of 2022. It was a 6-month window, so this is really a snapshot within our period here. Dr. Peavy was employed in December of 2020 and was terminated in early August 2022. So he was employed for approximately 20 months, and so our review only consists of 6 months or 30% of his entire tenure at Hawley Navarre. There were other allegations identified during our review process and interview process by various current and former Hawley Navarre employees. Those items were considered during our review process. Most of those items, based off of the reviews as well as our analysis of the information, existed prior to our scope of review. So those items were addressed with the current CEO for further review or possible action and consideration on the end. Just as a brief review, we had various procedures that we conducted during this examination that included interviews with key Hawley Navarre employees, a review of the internal controls and the environment, looking at financial records. We also looked at email correspondence for Dr. Peavy and various other supporting documentation within our 6-month period of time. So as a brief background, we also obtained a understanding of Hawley Navarre's books, records, policies, procedures. There has been turnover within management, both preceding our period and subsequent to our review period. Interviewees noted that there have been changes in the processes and some procedures. Most of those have been a result of the management turnovers and the styles of management. We did note that there was a general lack of understanding, and specifically in relation to procurement policies and procedures. There were some employees that noted that until recently, they were not aware that there were any procurement policies and procedures, and some were not even aware that they even existed. Briefly, our internal control findings related to non-compliance with established policies and procedures. There were purchase orders that we identified that were not completed as required or were completed subsequent to the actual date of purchase. There was documentation that was not properly maintained within the files, and so there was files that we reviewed that there was not sufficient documentation to determine whether proper approvals were completed or that the procurement process was properly followed. Within the procurement policies and procedures, there was contradictory terms, specifically in relation to whether board approval should be required or not. for higher level purchases. There's also a lack of disclosure of conflicts of interest. There's a conflict of interest policy that employees and board members are to follow, but there's no annual disclosure of those conflicts of interest if there is any. There's no central depository of if there has been an identification of the conflict of interest, what the resolution to those conflicts were or not. There is no fraud hotline or other type of hotline that the Holly Navarre uses for reporting potential violations or concerns of violations to either management or to the board. And there's also insufficient background checks in relation to key Holly Navarre employees. And there's also not a regular process where those background checks are done on a regular basis. And that's important because you have employees that are in charge of finances, and people's finances, circumstances may change over the years. And so we've had instances where, tenured folks that might have been employed with the organization for 10, 15 years, and they've been a good, trusted employee, and circumstances, financial circumstances change in their respect, and those circumstances were not noted and led to misappropriation within those other entities. So that's a concern there. In respect to the procurement findings, we identified several issues within our review, specifically in relation to the procurement of certain goods and services. So for the first 5 entries there that are noted on the screen there, from Foxton all the way down to Navarre East Bypass, we noted that there was insufficient documentation that was retained in the records of Holly Navarre in regards to who was actually awarded those contracts, how or when those evaluations took place, if rebids did in fact take place or public notification was done of those. And there was also a lack of documentation whether the minimum requirements for those bids were met, such as completing the mandatory pre-bid conferences or meeting the insurance requirements, things of that nature. The 6th item there, the standby generators, we identified that only 1 bid was obtained when 3 were required. Their process for the procuring of that services was as such not followed. There was no documentation in terms of whether that bid was sufficient, if there was consideration of sole sourcing that documentation, or if there was a rebid process. The 7th procurement item listed there, easement clearing. We identified that there was documentation indicating that had been rebid, when in fact there was no rebid process. We identified that the awarded bidder did not provide any insurance records and ultimately did not timely submit a response to the bid documents, nor did they attend the mandatory pre-bid conference. We also determined that Dr. Peavy specifically overrode policies and procedures in relation to this bid. The bid did result in a lower bid of approximately $35,000 lower than the other bids, but there is the concern that the procurement process was not followed and management override of the policies and procedures that were done in place. Other internal control findings existed in that 6 out of 20 selected purchase orders, there were no purchase orders in the files as required. In 10 out of the 15 instances that required CEO approval, 10 of those did not have any approval noted as required that the CEO expressly approved those items. Those are items that exceeded $2,500 of approval threshold. We also identified that the purchase order process is a manual process, and so we identified that there was manipulations to some of the purchase orders. And whether that was authorized or not, there was no documentation reflecting whether that was approved or not. In relation to bank statements, we noted that 2 bank statements were not approved in a timely manner, specifically May and June were approved 2 months subsequent to the period versus all the other ones were approved in a timely manner within the month after the bank statements have been provided. We also noted that the bank's reconciliation process was inefficient and prone to error and manipulation because it's being performed manually within Microsoft Excel. Our understanding is that management is in the process of obtaining a new accounting system, which will fix some of these issues that are being noted here today. There was no substantive credit card policies and procedures in relation to proper procurement and approval of those purchases, and whether there was any limitations on the CEO's discretionary spending. We did note that there is insufficient review or approval of certain fuel card usage. There was also limited oversight and lack of segregation of duty over the payroll process. We also identified that the former CEO, Dr. Peavy, potentially received unauthorized cost of living adjustment. Dr. Peavy's contract with Holly Navarre required that there be a board action or approval and review of his compensation. There was no noted approval within the board records. There was some discussion from Holly Navarre staff that indirect approval may have been granted, but again, there was no documentation of that. During our 6-month review period, that cost of living adjustment totaled $5,148 in respect to Dr. Peavy. So some of our recommendations for Holly Navarre to consider is document approved accounting policies and procedures. There are no approved accounting policies and procedures within Holly Navarre. There are certain internal control memorandums that discuss the process, but those are not policies and procedures. Those internal control memorandums were also inaccurate in some respects in relation to how things are actually done. And that also hurts the process, especially when there's transitions, and helps maintain a consistent financial reporting and policy and procedure aspects. We also recommend that there be a written policy regarding purchase order signatures prior to purchase. It's an unwritten rule, but we recommend that be a requirement and provide training in respect to procurement policies and procedures. Again, we also recommend that there be clarification of procurement policies and procedures from the noted issues, and that there be a consideration of a formal bid review process that considers the mandatory minimum requirements such as pre-bid meetings, insurance, capacity requirements, timely commissions, things along those lines. And then also develop policies and procedures regarding the management of vendor files, such as the master vendor list, insurance requirements, W-9s, etc. We also recommend that there be improvements made to procurement policies and procedures to help prevent future management overrides of internal controls, and implement, as I mentioned earlier, financial background checks on a regular basis. Require that bank reconciliations be completed within a designated time frame. This helps increase oversight, and if there is, for some reason, cannot be timely completed, that management and the board be notified of the untimely actions, so appropriate actions can be done. We also recommend that there be an annual disclosure process that's documented internally for potential conflicts of interest, and strengthen whistleblower programs and fraud awareness and fraud hotlines to employees. This will help with the internal process and the disclosure of potential violations or alleged violations of internal controls, policies, and procedures. Various employees noted that there was pressures during the prior management, and they were uncomfortable in reporting those to current management, to the then current management. And so having a fraud hotline that is directed to an independent body outside of management will help address those type of concerns. We also recommend that there be approval of the fuel card usage, and that there be additional controls placed over payroll to limit the segregation of duties that, or the lack thereof, that currently exists. So management has already implemented several steps, including implementing a new accounting system, implementing detailed background checks, and so management has already been working to address these type of issues. and management was very helpful to us in the process of this forensic investigation, and were very accessible and timely in the responses, and so we definitely appreciate their assistance throughout this process. And we want to thank you, the board as well, for allowing us to present here today, and we're here to answer any questions that you all may have.
Who has questions?
Do you believe that it would be beneficial to the board of directors and management to expand the scope of your engagement, or to expand the time on the engagement? Would it be beneficial if we weren't just focused on Dr. P?
Sure. So in respect to several of our findings, I believe that those findings would exist in a similar format preceding our period. That there's no policies, that there's lack of, purchase approvals or purchase orders in a timely manner. And so if there is the desire to expand the scope of the forensic investigation, I would recommend that that be more limited in specific areas, such as, those allegations that I mentioned earlier, or specifically in relation to some of the overrides, to see if that also existed in relation to other contracts and might exhibit some type of pattern of behavior. I would definitely focus more on a narrow basis versus just, expanding and looking at every single thing, because I don't think that would be cost effective for Holland Bar.
Thank you.
In regard to the credit card spending, did you find anything way out of the ordinary? I know the report talked about maybe food and drinks for these meetings, and there was a gasoline purchase and a couple other things. Was there anything that really stood out to you that was really not appropriate for somebody at Holland Water System to be purchasing with a credit card?
I don't believe there was anything inappropriate or, shall we say, nefarious in any of those charges. There might have been, everybody has their own different perspective. So some people might look and say, hey, there's maybe too many meals and entertainment type of purchases in there. And that's where we say, the board, if they so desire, we need to provide some direction on what the expectations are in that regard.
But as I read your report, that didn't just pertain to Mr. P. That was an overall process, just like the fuel card usage was the process. You mentioned the bid approval process, so you identified more than just that.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So you said if we extended the period, that you would expect to find similar issues because we don't have the policies, procedures, the same problems that were being caused before. You say maybe even 4 years ago, we'd have the same type of issues. We had no policies and procedures.
Right. So, I mean, I would, as far as my comments, I would relate that back to the prior 2 years. Just from what we have gleaned from the interviews further back, that would be a little bit of a guesstimate on my part. But I would expect to see, similar issues with some of the procurement processes, the bids and things of that nature because of the lack of policies and procedures in that regard.
Okay. So of the 15 recommendations, are these fairly common or what you would recommend to any company? Any of these, bubble up because of something that was particular to us, or are these pretty common things that any company our size or in our utility world or any world, we should be doing these things and we just don't?
Right. So I would classify that more as most of these are standard industry recommendations. We conduct these forensic investigations on many nonprofits and government agencies, and specifically one of the things that we commonly find is timely action on purchase orders. I would say Holland Bar is further behind than most in the timeliness of those. Most organizations, there might be a handful. In Holland Bar's case, it was significant as far as the purchase orders that were being approved or being generated after the purchase has already been done. And that's worrisome from the standpoint that the the whole reason for the purchase order is the control, as a preventative function, that if this purchase is not authorized, that purchase order identifies it before the purchase occurs. If you're doing it after the purchase occurs, the whole point of the purchase order system is pointless.
The lack of policies and procedures, though, existed prior to the period you looked at, right? There wasn't no historical thing where, although you mentioned a couple of times that some have been disregarded, but the baseline was that we didn't have any in some areas. That is true from way as far back as you consider in all the interviews. You never said anybody said that policies and procedures were canceled, right?
Correct. There's been no indication that there was any formalized policy and procedures for the length of our system.
So, Mr. Kincaid, so the conflict of interest disclosures, anything in your findings that said there was a conflict of interest and these bids were used to give to a business partner or anything like that? You mentioned something where the bid process was overridden in, say, $5,000, that sort of thing. But is there anything, you mentioned the conflict of interest disclosure specifically. Why is that? Because you found something that said something, the preference was given to a coworker?
Sure. So in relation to the recommendation, that is a common recommendation that we have. It's for transparency purposes within the organization. These conflict of interest disclosures, this is not something that we would recommend be made public or anything like that. It's an internal resource for transparency and accountability purposes, because not everyone may know of the direct or indirect interests someone may have within different organizations. That being said, within our 6-month period of time, we did look at the master vendor list, and we did look at key Holland of our employees and their addresses, known associates, and compared those to Holland of our vendors. We didn't identify any conflict of interest from that standpoint. But that's not to say that there wasn't any existed, because there was no disclosure for us to evaluate that in respect to. And so this is more of a recommendation for getting Holland of our on a good path moving forward. There has been allegations made regarding conflicts of interest, and again, most of those occurred prior to our review period, so we do not consider those, but we did do an active investigation in relation to our 6-month window of time.
So you didn't go into public records that says Joe Campbell LLC, not Joe Campbell, and our water gave that, I'm sorry, gave that to Joe Campbell. There was not, you didn't go that deep.
We did.
No. Okay, so you didn't, so my question is, you didn't find anything in this period that reflected a contract of any size was given based on a conflict of interest?
That is correct, for this 6-month period.
Check, thank you.
I think part of our tax reporting requires that the board of directors that are listed on a Form 990, I think it is, that the school has in there whether or not there's any conflicts of interest.
Right, but that doesn't cover key employees. I think there's only 2 key employees, if I remember, on tax forms, so.
I'm just, where I'm going with that is that we do have some level of that, but you're saying there should be an annual conflict of interest disclosure statement that's completed by all the board members, and which key employees would you say that needs to be? Anyone in the finance department, the management, who all would fall into that?
Correct. So I would say members of management, members of the finance team, if there's members that are regularly within the procurement process, that those also be subject to the conflict of interest process, because if they're evaluating bids and there's a chance that there might be a conflict of interest, that should be disclosed up front.
Is the audit available for the public? On the website?
This,
Yeah.
I know you all will be voting on that tonight, how to disseminate
The
that.
annual.
Any other questions?
Speaking of the annual audit, does your company do annual audits?
Yes, sir. So we're a top 25 accounting firm, and we do regular audits. I personally do not do regular audits. My practice and scope is forensic investigations, but we do annual audits.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering, from your knowledge, your company, when you have done audits of other companies, would you have noticed some of these issues? Or these only came up because we did a forensic audit? And some of these have bubbled up during our annual audits. We don't have a real procurement policy or a hard written one.
Sure. So some of these were identified within the most recent annual audits, such as the lack of accounting policies and procedures. That was noted as a finding, is my understanding, in the fiscal year 22 annual audit. There was no findings in the 21 audit. As far as previous audits, I'm not aware of if there was findings or not in that respect.
So you said, to your understanding in 2022, did you see the audit report?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I mean, so you know it was noted in there, not,
Correct. We reviewed the audit findings and management responses in relation to that. Yes, sir.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So what we have is a draft of the forensic audit. I think once this becomes a final version of the forensic audit, we need to decide as a board how we want to disseminate this. Does anyone want to make a motion or make a suggestion to that effect?
Mr. President, I believe the only thing that's required for this to be final is for us to tell him that he looks good. So I don't know if we're gonna do that tonight or not. I hope we do. I would like to make a motion that once this is complete, that it be posted on our website.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
My question to legal is, as far as vendors and employees, we all know it was centered on Mr. Peavy, so I'm not worried about that name, but is there any issue with publishing that we would have to redact companies and?
Yeah, I think Carl Riggs can make recommendations to us as to what documents or what information in the report ought to be public or can be made public and what ought not to be.
So we did not specifically, outside of Dr. Peavy, we did not specifically name employees for that particular reason. In regards to the vendors, we have no problem in updating the report to reflect redaction of the specific vendor names. I don't think there's really any issue in that regard.
Yeah, I think the only spot is the list of employees interviewed has names.
But correct, and my recommendation would be to leave that unredacted, just so people can see the extent, or we can redact the names, link the position titles, but that's going to be self-evident once people read it.
I would like to ask Dr. Richard if you would consider amending your motion so that we give the CEO approval to go final with this and then post it.
Say it one more time, so you just want to.
You mentioned
Okay, so-
whether we're going to take a vote to give him approval rather than as a second motion. I'd like to include it on the.
Okay, so I'll back my first motion and make a motion to approve the finalization of the forensic examination report and to have the CEO post the report to our website within 48 hours.
I'll second it.
My question is regarding the final version of it. Do we want it to go through a redaction process before it's posted?
I think, personally, I think that everything should be posted online, all of it. If there's anything that our attorney thinks that may be legally questionable by us putting online, then certainly we need to redact that. But beyond that, I think everything needs to be given to our members so they can use what happened.
Yeah, with what Carl Riggs indicated, the focus was limited to the Dallas Peavy. We know that. That was the point. And the others would be redacted from the vendor list. Everything else would be within the board's prerogative to post.
So you'll provide me a final with those changes within so I can get within 48.
Correct.
We got it?
Okay. All in favor, Mark? I'm sorry.
Darryl, was that within 48 hours of like today? Of going fine.
Going fine.
At that time, yeah.
It'll be this week.
How
It'll be
hard
this
is it
week.
to upload something online?
Got to draw some black lines. We'll give them a couple days and then we'll
Okay,
post
Mr.
it.
Hall? Go ahead, Mr. Hall.
Okay, well, they were talking, I didn't want to talk over. Couple of questions. One, there was a graph in that deal that he showed, I believe it was January through June, spending that looked like a spaceship taking off.
That was his credit card.
Yeah, the debit card.
Harlan, I looked at that one as well, and I think the thing that's confusing is it's not, or correct me if I'm wrong, but that's cumulative. So it's
Yeah.
always, it's only gonna go up. It's never gonna go up and down. I was looking at it because it
Oh, I
says
thought that was each month spending, I thought that was things looking like this.
It's just month spending, it's not cumulative.
Oh, okay, so each month was more than the last.
See, so it was.
Yes.
Yeah, only going up.
Ended about
Another
$3,000.
24 months, they were, anyway.
Started out small, 400, ended up about 3.
Yeah.
Joking with Jeff, that's how we're gonna watch him, you know,
But wasn't it about 5 grand there at the end?
3.
Well, I don't have my
But
glasses.
every month, you know, that's 30,000 possibly.
Well, it seemed like a lot. There's a jump. Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that, or some clarification. I noticed that you said something else about some other concerns that came out in this audit. I understand they're probably private employee concerns with management or whatever. Didn't he mention something like that at the very beginning?
Yes, sir.
Now, how are those being dealt with? You don't have to tell me that,
Internal?
were they turned over to the new CEO to deal with, or were they turned over to the board?
We discussed, Ben called me and briefed me on those and asked if he wanted his scope expanded to look further into them because they were just allegations at that point, or they are at this point. So and my response to him was, you know, it needs to be a board decision. I can't expand that scope without the board acting upon it. So I think the questions from Darryl to Ben kind of got into that is there a benefit to expanding that scope or not? So I think they kind of had that discussion.
So I thought his answer also said they were before the date. Most of them were before the 6-month period. Did I hear that wrong?
That is correct. They were before our 6-month period. So we specifically looked at them in our 6-month period of time and found that those related prior to our window of time.
And I think we had whenever we were initially discussing this last year, the 6-month period, you know, we were trying to lower our costs, you know, control the scope so the cost wouldn't get out of hand. But I think we also had discussions last year about what would happen if they found things to expand the scope. And I think that they have, but I think the board needs to get an understanding of what items he found and decide whether we want to expand the scope to look into those.
Well, for my
Probably
opinion,
not the right setting.
for my 1.5 cents on it, I'll tell you, if you got allegations that showed up, but they were, even though they were prior, you don't have to chase this broad spectrum backwards. You know, like you said, you can limit the scope, which is obviously gonna limit the dollars. I think that you ought to at least bring them, either bring them to fruition, that there are actually allegations that are meaning there, or that there's nothing, and a report to where you can take it to nothing. I mean, it's not my call to do that, that's obviously the board's, but I mean, if he's already found it, I think that you'd be, you know, kind of lacking in your fiduciary responsibilities here by not chasing them to ground. And another thing that I'm gonna bring up is, that's a whole lot of stuff, and this is not my first time around these kind of audits. We did a lot of them throughout, my career in the union. When we close down locals or have theft or anything like that. And when you have this much come up in this little 6-month period, and that was just, and if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, that was just on the water bill. Is that correct?
Talk about the audit was just on the water board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we directed at Mr. Peavy, I understand that. Well, I think it needs to, I think you need to do another one and expand it to the golf course and see what's going on there. If you got this much going on here, what's happening across the street? And expand this one. I know I'm talking about spending not only everybody in this area's money to do it, but even my own. And I'm willing to pony up, you know, if it costs me a little more for water to get things cleaned up going forward.
Well, we're gonna get this draft out in 48 hours, right? So then you guys can see it, and I think if the public has an appetite for it, then you go from there. Otherwise, most of this stuff was really small amounts. No great thing that jumped out, just so, you know, you get a chance to look at it.
I'm just saying, when you see that much come up, you know what I mean? What's going on in the other branches?
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Any other board discussion?
If I may, just one clarification. So during our 6-month period, we did look at the transactions in relation to the club and Messi. So that was within our scope, since that was, you know, they're subsidiaries of Holly Navarre. We did look and analyze those type of transactions.
Okay, and was there anything significant at the club or Messi? I don't remember seeing anything specific to those.
Not outside what's noted within the report, and, you know, those same recommendations would still apply to those entities as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? So the motion is to finalize this and release it within 48 hours. All in favor, say aye.
So I don't,
Aye.
so correct, I don't think that was the motion. I thought the motion was get it finalized, and once we receive the final copy, get it posted in 48 hours, not do all that in 48 hours.
Yeah, no, from 48 hours from the time, what my motion said was 48 hours from the time this thing is finalized, it will be posted on.
That was what I meant, but maybe it didn't come out.
And we're approving it, and we're finalizing it right now.
Well, I think there are some line throughs on things that need to be done.
They'll have to redact some.
Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Motion carries.
Mr. President, before you move on to your next item, I'd like to ask for clarification on the unfinished business on the canvassing board. I know the action of the board was to appoint Director Blanchard as the director on that board. I think it'd be clean also to go on ahead and get the board to approve the 2 other persons that are named to the canvas board by position, but who will actually be the ones who show up, and that'll be Jeff and myself, just for this election cycle, so that that is clear. The canvassing board is a group of 3. It's designated as the CEO, your legal counsel, and a member of the board. You've made the direction for the member of the board, just make that affirmative and vote, and then we'll be clear about who the members are.
Good catch there.
I make a motion to appoint the CEO and our legal expertise as members of the campus.
Actually, what I would like for it to say would be Jeff Krigler
Jeff
and Will
Krigler.
Dunaway, so we'll know those are the 2 who show up.
I amend my motion to make Jeff Krigler and Will Dunaway the other 2 members of the campus.
Second
What
motion.
about there?
He's already been approved.
Okay.
I'm committee 1, right?
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
I second it.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion carries. Thank you all. Okay, we're on to our CEO update, Mr. Krigler.
Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. Appreciate your work.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one, this positive item we had in our wastewater plant, we had a significant clarifier repair in, I guess it was late August. And we're able to do all that work in-house, and it saved us otherwise a bunch of money. I'll let Clinton describe a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah, so Chris called me, said, clarifier good in, $1 million gallon clarifier good in the wastewater treatment plant. I've been down there. The scum trough, can leaves out of the clarifier itself. Some of y'all been down there and took a tour. You know, there's paddle wings come around top of that clarifier, and any debris that's floating on top, puts it in the scum trough. One of the washers that bolted on the wall had corroded and actually broke loose, and so trough in the clarifier. So we drained it down and repaired it all ourselves in-house. Chris got out, jumped right on it, got all the proper pieces we needed, and actually fabricated some new washers out of heavy steel so they won't corrode away.
And you graded with well points this time, right?
That was
We were all pretty nervous. We made the repairs, cleaned the clarifier up, checked for any other abnormalities that may cause some issues down the road, and repaired those. Painted the steel rings on the inside. So as the weather's cooling off, we're gonna break those down as well, and with some well points, and do some preventive maintenance on them as well. So, but Chris's guys did a good job, and it was all done in-house, saved us a lot of money.
Thanks, sir.
Good job.
That's all I have for updates. I was going to mention an issue at the annual notice, but Will and I are still working through it, so I'll brief that next month.
Okay, we're on to finance, review of the July 2023 financials. Mr. Pritchard.
Yes, thank you. I'll let Barbara brief the July financials.
Okay, the water impact fees were down just a little bit from previous month, while the wastewater was up just a little bit. Water and wastewater sales were both up from the previous month. There was a loss on an asset. There was a grinder pump that was stolen off the back of one of the company vehicles. It was $11,880. The 401k match, we are now accruing that monthly, so you have a monthly expense hit instead of the quarter. Make the numbers look good even over the year. And our annual net income is $553,197, and July income $219,733. Well, I think we have a decent month.
Real quick question that I'm sure it was important to the sheriff, but where was the grinder pump here in our yard, or was that for looking at it?
It was stolen off back of the truck, so one of our employees was coming from the fair, and went to lunch, pulled up to his girlfriend's house, had lunch, and came back out, noticed the grinder pump was stolen off back of the truck. We reviewed some surveillance footage that we had from neighboring businesses around there. We really couldn't tell a whole bunch. There was a police report filed. And now the new procedure is that the truck is chained in the back of the truck lock until you need to remove it, put it in the grinder station.
So they knew what they were after, though, huh?
We've never had it.
Yeah, it's
That's a grinder. I mean, that's,
It's
Chunk of metal.
looks expensive, so.
right. Or it's a big lump of metal that makes them get scrapped.
Chunk of metal.
How big is it size?
It's probably about 2.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
You have to know what you were looking for.
That's
in
what I
order
was
to-
thinking.
Well, it's got a big cola cable on it too, so
Yeah.
copper.
If you were just
inside
looking
There you
for
go.
metal,
Okay.
metal and copper.
They got $15 worth of metal out of an
Yes.
$1,800
Yeah.
pump. That's right. Somebody bought that.
All right, any other questions on finance?
I do, Mr. President. We have an account called due from the club at Hidden Creek on our balance sheet, $277,450.14. I know what that is. And we also have an account due to the club, $64,554.63. Why do we have two accounts? Shouldn't they just be netted against one another, and if not, what's the purpose of having two?
I was asking me.
Well, I'll say part of the issue that, part of the due from, I believe that was tabled from a previous meeting. I think that was brought up and it was tabled of what to do with that, if I recall correctly.
My recollection is that was last year's spray field expenses plus the first 3 months those were paid by Holly of our water system direct. We said stop doing that.
It was the funds identified by
In
the
the
audit, that's correct. And the 64 is part of the approved reimbursement, right, the due to,
That's
that the board agreed to, part of the 169,000.
Okay, so we're just putting it into that account, we're not giving them any money. We're just showing it as a liability.
no, that is what is due to the golf course for their monthly spray.
Okay, so that's what you do for them month.
Is it gonna be transferred to the club?
It
will-
is.
A check will be issued. It has been issued.
I think we need the club. Is there? Where's the club at?
Also, if you look on the golf course report, it has a due from Holly Bar, and it's the same amount, 64,000.
Yes.
So when we issue the check for 64,000, they'll just post it to that account.
I'm trying. But they also show the 277 that they owe us. Yes, the club. Okay. So we're not gonna, so the club at Hidden Creek is not going to, I guess, it's not really a management question, it's a board question. Have we decided that the golf course is not gonna pay back the $277,000 it took from new members last year?
Thought we already talked about this.
We talked about it in February, I believe it was. I made the recommendation that the golf course write a check for the amount that it had improperly taken from Holly Naval Water System for the first 6 months of the year prior to the board agreeing to pay any spray field expenses. At which point I was told that, hey, we'll look into that and we'll bring it up at another board meeting. Well, we're 7 months down the road, so I'd like to know what we're gonna do because it's our members' money that was taken by the club at Hidden
So
Creek.
what was the motion that David made that we would do the 106.9 for this year? We would not, and then, wasn't that for one of you?
I think I said.
I thought we had already done that, put that to bed. I thought we compared this, right?
Oh, okay, so we're not gonna pay it, so we're not gonna pay it.
Say that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't say that. I'm just trying to understand the previous.
I thought that it was tabled.
These expenses were valid spray field expenses under the motion that was made in September. Okay, now.
In September, not in January when they started paying.
I understand that, but in September, when we started to clarify what was valid spray field expenses, what was not, because that had not been clarified before,
Moving ball.
okay? Well, it didn't really move the ball there. Those expenses were the same
I
if
said
we'd have made the motion in February.
Moving forward.
Moving,
From September of last year forward.
I
That's
don't,
what it was.
I don't know that that was in the motion, but whatever,
Well, I know that in November of 2021, the board made a point to tell the public, all of our members here, all the members online, that Holly of our water system was no longer paying any of the bills to Club at Hidden Creek, and on January 1, it kept paying the bills.
any of the bills for the golf course operation, we were still paying bills
And
for spray
we
field.
argued about it for 7 months, until an accountant finally came in and told us that, hey, you're doing it wrong. So
The only thing
I'd just like to know I'd like to know how we're gonna clear this $277,000 off of our books. Either we're going to pay it, or we're gonna say we're not, and we're just gonna write it off and say that our members' money can stay at the golf course. The board needs to do something with them because
But
they're just
technically,
carrying them forward.
it's technically not our members' money because those were valid straight-through expenses. We did an exhaustive study, which we've tried to do for years. It's $300,000 to run the thing, and those were all expenses that were in the motion. Now, if you want to just say, okay, that we're gonna, those checks, yes, the auditor said those checks should have been written by the club and then reimbursed by Holly Bar Water. Okay, instead but they said there was really, if we had one rating, they said technically there was nothing wrong with it. Holly Bar could do that.
Our CPA firm said that? I think our former, accountant said that. I think our attorney said that. I think management, the people we fired, they said that. But
No,
I don't think our CPA firm ever said that.
I'll
I think we had some people writing misleading emails to CPA, to our CPA firm.
I'll defer to Barbara, but my understanding was, the thing that was wrong is those charges did not show up on the club's books. The fact that the Holly Bar could write the check was not a real issue as long as those charges showed up on the books and then they were paid by Holly.
Holly Navarre is to, if Holly Navarre gives the golf course any money, Holly Navarre writes the check to the golf. And not to the vendors themselves.
And that was the recommendation of our CPA firm, right?
Yes, and we've since implemented it.
I'll just comment that over the years, Holly Navarre Water System has invested a lot more than $277,000 in the club. We've-
In excess of $8 million
Yeah.
of our members.
So, you know, beginning with the purchase and going through with whenever there was any kind of a shortfall, and there was something needed, we paid for it and we called it an investment in the.
We gave them money. We didn't pay for it.
Well, we gave them the money but we considered it an investment in the club. And so there's more than $277,000 that has been invested in the club over the years.
And we've always been forthright with our members. We've always told them how we were spending their money. That year we did. We told them we weren't going to spend their money. Did anyway.
Could you please use your mic?
Sorry. Yes, we took the money from them and we spent it when we told them we weren't going.
Well, I don't agree with that statement exactly. I think it was just a misunderstanding of how the checks were written. They were all valid expenses that were due to Sprayfield expense. Okay?
Are we going to pay it back now?
So I don't think we're gonna get an answer tonight. For me, to tell you the truth,
Well, if you're.
the past year, I couldn't tell you how many motions we've said or not said and what we do or say. So I would recommend that we direct the CEO for next month, and agenda item is who pays what, when, and how for the golf course, and how do we pay them, and what have we done over this past year with motions or not motions? What have we said we would do, and are we doing that or not?
I'll do it, but I think we're good currently. I think the 277 is mostly 2022. So I think we are.
Well, the question is, do we pay that back? And that's what I think Daryl's asking.
Yeah, it needs to be paid back. Or this board needs to make a motion that we're going to forgive that debt.
And when we pay it back, are you saying then the water system is gonna write a check to the golf course?
If they need it.
So I'm saying I don't have a good handle on the various
They got
discussions we've had just this year, let alone last year also.
Club at Hidden Creek currently has $567,000 in it. So it has ample funds to pay us back, pay back the members following all ones.
Back for what? My understanding.
$277,000.
I understand that. Were they golf-related items, golf balls and golf carts, or was it actually Sprayfield items?
I have no idea because nobody wanted to discuss it.
She can determine that those are all valid Sprayfield expenses. That's not true.
That is where determined that they're all Springfield related expenses.
They were never approved by the board of directors.
I have no
Until
problem.
September last
Until
year.
September, so the first 9 months of the year were never,
I have no problem with taking our members' money from the club, giving it to the water system, and then having the members again write a check to the club for the same amount. If that's what you want to do, we can do that.
only if I
That's
need
what I'm
it.
hearing, because the money, wherever that money is, it's our members. No, it's not Holly Navarre members, the golf course is part of Holly Navarre. And we either take the profits or we don't take the profits, that's all separate. But they own that, and Messi, anything in Messi's operating budget is our members. Let's keep that in mind. So, like I said, I don't know what I do not have a good recollection on exactly what's been said the last year and a half. So I would like to see our CEO put all that down. If he has to research month by month, get that and let's lay it out next month and say, this is what we're doing.
Almost like a timeline
I
showing
just
what all happened.
want our books fixed. We've got $277,000 liability here on one books, $277,000 asset on another books. Are they real or are they fictitious? Because if they're fictitious and we're not gonna do anything with them, let's get them off the books.
Why would they be fictitious?
Well, because you're never gonna write a check for it.
If the money's already been spent for those, why are they even on? If the money's been spent for spray
Because
field
it was
expenses.
never properly
Because of
appropriated.
the account, because of the check written by Holly.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Cosby. Would you state your name for the record?
Kurt Cosby, Holly by the Sea. It's the question I've been asking since I've been coming to these meetings over a year now. Are we making money with Messi? Are we making money with the golf course? And nobody's, and I even asked y'all, probably 6 months ago, can I get a breakdown of year by year, the profit loss? And, you guys won't provide it. Are we making any money with these two entities, or are we not?
I've always been for putting everything online. I think we should put.
Well, I think we decided as a board, and not that we can't change this, but because those are private for-profit corporations, it's not in our members' best interest to put all of those financials out there in case we, at some point, decided to sell the golf course again or, do something else with it. Those are for-profit entities, and I don't know that that's the best thing to put their financials out there.
Counselor, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't want to answer hypothetical legal questions from the dais, but if the board has something that they want to ask and then direct staff to review, we'll certainly look into it and provide opinions to that.
I don't know, Mr. Miller, I don't understand the answer to that, because what difference does it make? The membership needs to know if we're subsidizing a losing entity. And in the future, to sell it, if you're making money, that's going to help you to sell it.
Well, the word subsidize is not really the right word. We own a spray field that we allow people to play golf on. And the revenue from golf offsets some of those expenses that we would normally spend if we were going to be maintaining that just as a spray field. So in that respect, with the money that we spend on the spray field expenses, the golf course does make a small amount of money monthly, most months. Same thing with Messi. Messi is a profit center that Holly Water System owns, and we benefit from. It's a mutually beneficial relationship to have our own engineering firm in-house. But as far as publishing the actual amounts of those, because those are private entities, that's not in the water system.
Well, would you consider saying, per each month or how about every quarter, you either made a profit or it's a loss? And then at the end of the year, you say profit or loss. But, I don't need I'm not planning on buying a golf course, so it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I would just like to know if it's making money or if it's not
But
making.
okay, here, let me try to explain this, my understanding. We just had the engineers complete the study of what it would cost if we closed down the golf course tomorrow to do the spray field, expenses to maintain it as a spray field. That came to roughly $26,000 a month.
Oh,
More than
I'll take your word.
Yeah, and I
$340,000.
remember that, and I understand
Okay.
that, and that's applied to the profit and loss. Just put it as a note. I'm just asking.
But they're not reimbursing. Hollywood Water is
understand.
currently reimbursing, we've reimbursed about less than 2/3 of that.
I know.
So
we-
technically, the members are having a benefit of the golf course operation because the golf course is defraying part of those costs.
I understand it, y'all. This is the answer I've been getting for over a year. I understand how you put it together. I just want to know if we're making money or if we're not making on the golf course. And you apply, spray field costs. I understand that completely. I understand.
And beyond that, but considering the golf course is making money this year.
Right. And I'm all good. I just want to know if we're making money.
Of which a bunch of it's going back.
I think I would say this, I think most of the members want to know at this point. This is something we need to know.
Well, I think some of the money that the golf course has made is being reinvested. They're making some improvements to the clubhouse there, to the meeting room, meeting facility. They're renting that out and generating income, so they are
That
reinvesting.
should be all part of it. It's a note under that quarterly report or monthly or yearly, however you guys want to do it. But the members need to know where we're at on that particular day when the report's done. That's all I'm saying.
Barbara,
I
it's
think Mr.
at the annual, like the packet at the end of the year, is the golf course information on that? Remember seeing like a
It's,
end of the year?
Any interaction with Hollywood?
if you look at our annual audit, you can see. If you look at our
It's there,
tax,
right?
you can see. It's on a monthly basis, that they're not providing the members with the financial statements. So the information's there. And to a certain extent, the monthly stuff, club isn't really gonna do you any good because you're gonna have, you've got 6 months where you're gonna lose money and 6 months where you're gonna make money.
I understand that. See, almost every other meeting, every third meeting, this comes up. You start talking about 270K to 169K, and y'all go back and forth. And the membership's watching it right now,
I hope so.
and they're going, what in the hell are they talking about? And it would be very easy just do a quarterly report every quarter and tell you this is the bottom line. And it's based on all this, it's based on the spray field, it's based on whatever money you're having to refurbish inside the clubhouse or the parking lot or whatever you're doing. It should be reported.
Mr. Coffey, here's what I'm going to tell you. Our end of July is $204,000 net profit. But that doesn't take into account the spray field cost that Hollywood Water has done.
Right.
So that part is, paints a rosy picture, but like Darrell said,
Yeah.
we're going into the small months where we're not going to earn anything. So in my mind, as long as we're less than $314,000 that the water system's doing for the spray field, that the golf course offsets, it's better for members.
And I understand
So
that.
this year, I think the motion I was alluding to earlier was when David or Bill, we capped it, I thought at $169,000.
169.9.
So that means, in essence, we are, because having a golf course saves members $150,000. Not a lot, but it's $2 off your bill.
What
So-
I'm getting at here, like I pointed out, every meeting, every other meeting, every third meeting, these questions about the golf course and money come up.
The
With
same question.
no
Well,
less than 200,
If
300.
it's still there, it's the right answer, the answer
It's-
he wants, it's gonna keep saying.
Well, it's confusing, and I brought this up before, and I'm saying, you guys can do some kind of report where this makes sense, and then there's no more of these questions every meeting. Well, what's this? 270K. That's all. That's what, the board's, is creating confusion for the membership. I can tell you. I mean, y'all can tell this is confusing. It shouldn't be confusing.
Mr. President, have we got a motion on the table right now?
We don't,
Okay, I've got a motion that I'd like to, we have a category on our, the club at Hidden Creek. It's called spray field expenses. This month it's $60,000 or $70,000. I'd like to make a motion that staff provide the board of directors each month in our package a detailed, general ledger of that particular account to show us each individual expense that was paid for it. Because just writing spray field expenses, and I'll tell you the exact number once I get to it, $63,000 just doesn't do it.
40,000 of that was the pump.
I think Barb has that, then she's the one that's the gatekeeper on making sure.
It's $41,000, $83,000 a year. But I understand whenever you say electricity, repairs and maintenance, the pump house or repairing the pump, but spray field expenses, it's too vague to make, to be useful.
I would recommend that she just be able to break that out. In other words, say the $64,000 includes these items, and every else break it. You don't have to break it out on the spreadsheet.
All you gotta do is click print general ledger. It prints one page with the whole thing on there.
I don't think so, does it? No. Ain't that easy.
Do you have to print out each individual check whenever you print us a check register?
Yes, but it's only gonna have 64,000. It's not gonna give you I would recommend just a copy of the invoice because Kim does a great job in itemizing.
Okay.
And.
Do you keep the accounting here or is it down there? Do you keep the accounting here or down there?
It's here.
Okay, I'll come by tomorrow, see what you got.
so any other discussion on Darrell's motion that the board be provided a breakdown of that amount? Spray field expenses.
Laura said it's on the invoice, so really all we need is a copy of that invoice.
Well, if you've got 20 checks in there, you're gonna get 20 invoices there.
No, we only issue one check a month.
Okay, I'm talking about the one on the club at Hidden Creek's book, not on Holly Bar Water System book. I want to know what the $41,215.09 was.
Jeff,
Was
do
it
you-
one check or was it a whole bunch of?
Jeff, do you approve the individual Springfield items?
Yes.
So that the staff up there isn't doing anything, it's, we're talking about sprinkler heads and that sort of thing, not,
No, we look very closely at those and make sure they're placed in the proper
okay.
bucket.
So staff, it would be fairly easy for staff to provide.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Like I said, a second.
Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Before I call the vote, Harlan, was your comment on this issue or on something else? Right.
Something else.
Can we go ahead and vote
The
on
previous,
this?
but you go ahead and take care of the motion.
I'll recognize you as soon as
Yes.
I understand what it is.
Did we have a second?
We had a motion and a second.
Joe did.
Joe seconded.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Abstention, motion carries. Okay, Mr. Hall.
I got two things. One, this 277,000, I think I've been hearing about it, but I think it's Mr. Linnell, if I'm not mispronouncing his name like him. I've heard it, all this confusion and to nauseam. And it sounded like you had a pretty easy fix just to get it right with accounting, which was for the golf course to write a check to Holly Navarre for $277 and Holly Navarre to write one back to the golf course for $277, and it cleared it up. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but that's what I gathered by sitting there. And then we could quit listening or hearing about it every month. I mean, that seems like, maybe that's too simple. I am kind of a simple person, but I mean, 1 + 1 is, 2, come on. The other question I had that came up about spray fields. Okay? You're saying that, I don't know how many acres the golf course is, or
200.
you don't have to break it down. But what do you guys calculate an acre for a spray field? For cost? I mean, like, if you had to,
We got those costs from our engineers who did the study, so
no,
I don't know.
I'm not arguing, I'm not arguing the number at all, okay? I just wanna know, if I had 100 acres, right? And you wanted to use it for a spray field, what would you pay me to spray on?
Nothing.
Oh, somebody wait for an answer from me?
Somebody, I mean,
I mean, it would
That, that's an open-ended question, that depends on what the property is being used for, and I think the more appropriate question is what Joe or Bill or one of the other already said. If the golf course operation were closed, if we decided we didn't want to deal with golf out there anymore, we just wanted to use their spray field, what would it cost Holly Navarre to operate that spray field every year? That's a dollar amount, and I'll trust Joe and Bill that whatever number they said a while ago was the number we came up with. If the golf course loses less money than that every year, the golf course provides a benefit. The operation of the golf course provides a benefit to Holly Navarre water system.
oh, I was curious how expensive it was to do this, that's all I was getting.
300 and
Without the golf course, it's 200 acres and $314,000, so divide 200 and $314,000.
1,500 an acre or something.
$1,600
That's all I wanted.
$1,600 an acre.
Do you have 100 acres?
No, I like round numbers, so.
So we need a motion to approve our monthly financials. I don't think we have that motion on the table yet. So
I make a motion to approve the financials for July as submitted.
motion, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion on the financials? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstention? Motion carries. We're on to our director's update. We have our finance committee update first. Joe Campbell.
So we did do CIP and I had a professional commitment, so it was Director Lyncher who said it.
Yes, the, on budget, we're right at our numbers. We're hitting them, every month. I think we were at like 72%, 71%, for most of them. So we're tracking right along with the budget. Other than we're making a lot more on interest this year. It was a result of our response.
Right.
San Rose County Reuse Project update, that's me. We've actually, our next agenda item is going to be to consider the bid for Phase 1A. So that's a pretty big step on that side of the project. We'll take care of that here in a few minutes. Southern Cleveland Creek, Mr. Krugler.
Really nothing else to add after that previous discussion. I was going to go over the net income for the month of July as well as year to date. We've already done that. The 96,000 for the month, 204,000 year to date. As was also mentioned, the summer is a high revenue time. The high heat kind of did impact us there at the end and in August a little bit. And then of course people going back to school, it drops off a little bit too. But overall, still a really strong revenue year.
Fairpoint update, that's you, Mr. Krugler.
Yes, so we did finally get the member agreements fully executed. So that task is done. Bashville Donovan is working on a master plan update for Fairpoint. That'll most likely include siting and locating 2 new wells for Fairpoint. Of course, within that East Milton well field. We expect Bashville Donovan to present that at the October Fairpoint Board, the results of that master plan update. And then we also recently received approval from the from FDEP's financing I guess the SRF loan section of DEP on Fairpoint's materials solicitation for the booster pump station. So we're able to proceed with that, and we'll be giving that contractor notice of award. I believe that happened today, or if not today, this week. So.
Municipal engineering, Bill Phillips.
I think everyone heard pre-meeting, but purchasing has ordered both the items approved by the board for Messi to purchase for benefit of both parties, the camera, ATV, and I signed the check earlier today for the manhole camera. So that's all we got going on at the moment.
Good. All right, next on the agenda, the South Santa Rosa reuse project, Eglin Phase 1A bid award. Mr. Grigg.
Yes, thank you. So we bid this project out in, I believe it was June, received one bid, brought it back to the board and decided to rebid it. Our consultant Jacobs made some very minor changes to the contract documents. It didn't really alter the scope at all. We rebid it. We reached out to some contractors to make sure they either saw it or were they still interested. Opened those bids in, I guess it was late August. We had 5 bids, so that it was certainly a worthwhile effort to re-advertise that. 5 bids are shown in your packet. They range from 4.8 million to all the way up to 8.6. So it's a diverse set of bids. We had 2 bids really tight, the low bidder at 4.8, second low at 4.883 million. So we reviewed the bids. The lowest responsive bid is L&K Contracting, and we are recommending award to them.
Staff's recommendation is to award to the low bidder, L&K Contracting. Someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion, we award the contracting bid for the Eglin Project Phase 1A to L&K Contract in the amount of $4,800,000.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Jeff, can you remind us, this is just the RIDS portion, or does this?
Everything on
Go to
Eglin
the
property.
Right.
Everything on
So a
Eglin.
little bit of pipeline in the ribs.
So it goes to the line, the boundary of Eglin, and then the construction of the RIDS.
Yep,
It also includes the environmental study.
that's right.
It includes the provisions of the lease that the tortoise survey,
Red cockade,
cockaded woodpecker,
and go for target.
And now on here you talked about the slide, the liner versus, excuse me, the liner versus.
we didn't change anything.
You didn't change that?
We didn't change anything.
I do
But it's
have,
still lined.
That's all I have. Go ahead.
I have one question on, just looking at the bids. The one that I assume staff has recommended is LNR, which is happens to be the lowest bid, but line 4 pops out at me. They've bid $250,000 for site clearing, whereas the other 4 respondents bid anywhere from $984,000 up to $2.1 million. There's no leeway for them to come back and say, hey, we messed up on that one,
Well,
give us another $750,000.
I would say no, because it appears if you look at line 7 as well, it looks like they placed their money for the earthwork between those 2 items.
Yeah.
And the contractors did it in different ways. So I think between those 2 items, we're covered.
Okay.
And you never know, Daryl, how they envision
Yeah,
getting rid of that stuff, whether they might have something local that they've already got lined up, a place to dump it. You just never know.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just for staff and if L&K is the one that they. That was my only question.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
These are abstentions. Motion carries. All right, on to our engineering report.
The only thing that I will point out this month is that the Pauline Navarre did not have the I&I issue that we've had for many years now, which we have substantially reduced. The numbers that you see on that page would be the numbers that you would see throughout the year. And so this month, it reflects the fact that of the water we sold, not all of it came back. And that's what you would expect. Every single one of you bought water this month, and every single one of you used water that could not possibly have gotten back into the sewer system. So you generally expect, particularly during your summer months, that you only receive a percentage, 80% of it perhaps, coming back. And you can see this month, 215,000 gallons of the water sold to sewer customers didn't come back. So generally, when we sit here and talk about I&I, lately in the last few years, we've just actually considered it good if it's zero, when in fact it really should look like that number that you see right there. That's really reflective of the system functioning without I&I, what we should be treating at the wastewater treatment plant. So. And of course, it's been dry. It's not because every issue has been solved by Mark and his guys. It's just because there has been no rain and the groundwater is at record low levels right now.
I'll get back on my soapbox again. I noticed the unaccounted for loss went up a little bit this month.
I wasn't gonna comment on
It was
that.
really great last month. I had this side conversation with Clinton, but I just like him to tell the rest of the board what we talked about.
Well, it's, I told Bill, you really can't get hung up on water loss because you have a lot of issues. You'll go a month, you won't have running line breaks. Another month, all of a sudden, they really got your head up and you'll have 15 or 20 in a month. We are having some hydraulic issues right now, which we're battling. We have a couple of things that are overflowing periodically during the night, but we're trying to get a handle on that, so we're not spending water on track. It's a balancing act right now between all of our water system and fair point. Portion of that will be solved in the near future when we get our million tank bill back to the store. Fair point. But it's just a chasing tail all the time. You'll never get them all. Correct them as soon as we find.
Any other questions for Bill or Clinton? That concludes our agenda items. We're going now to member 4. And first up is Harlan Hall. Are you Gary?
Yeah.
What's your last name?
That's close. I'll give you credit for that quickly. I live at 2580 Cypress Point Circle. Been in front of the board before about the LAS system over there at Holly by the Sea. I've did an open records request for the entire file on the relationship between Holly by, let me first say, I don't represent the board or any board members. I'm just a member. I've designed probably 30, 40 LAS systems and water and sewer plants, so I got a little expertise in this area. Anyway, I pulled the entire file, went through the file. 2017, Yvonne Harper, who was president of the board at the time, found out that the contract that was signed back in 2001 was no longer valid between Holly by the Sea and Holly by the Sea Water and Sewer. She tried to negotiate a contract with Paul Gardner. I'm not aware of who he is.
He's our prior general manager.
Okay, well, she tried to negotiate a contract. It went back and forth. I've got the documentation. They couldn't come to terms. So Yvonne Harper sent a letter to the Water and Sewer Board stopping all spraying on the Holly by the Sea property. I could not find anything in the file that was negotiated after that fact saying, go ahead and start spraying again. Now, I understand the pump, if the pond is out right now, I get that from the maintenance department, I don't know for sure. But also see too that you're continuing to pump effluent to the pond. So I assume you're using it as a rapid infiltration basin now since you can't spray over on the property. So at this point, you know, not unless there's something different, for 6 years, y'all been spraying on that property without a contract.
So let me see if I clear all of this stuff. Holly Navarre paid for the installation of an irrigation system on the Holly by the Sea recreation area as a settlement for DEP for some operation issues that went on years and years ago. That was penance. Holly Navarre wanted to obtain additional reuse capacity, and DEP agreed that if Holly Navarre would pay for the installation of that irrigation system, not that there wasn't an irrigation system before, but the irrigation system was upgraded, and it was connected to the pond where the reuse was being placed so that it could be used on the Holly by the Sea recreation area. Holly Navarre Water System has never, ever, 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 ever had a contract or authority to operate that irrigation system. That irrigation system is operated only by Holly by the Sea. When the issue occurred where we identified that Holly Navarre was having capacity issues with regard to reuse because I was so bad, one of our thoughts was that, in fact, Holly by the Sea was not operating the recreation center irrigation system hardly at all. They weren't using the water. So Holly Navarre went to Holly by the Sea and said, and there were some issues with the system at the time. The pump wasn't working. Yeah, there was the controller had some issues. There were some heads that had been removed and broken. Holly Navarre Water System went to Holly by the Sea and said, hey, look, we will take over that system for operation and maintenance. We'll fix everything that's wrong out there, put a brand new controller in, some brand new heads and locations, fix the pump that pumped out of the ponds, as long as we have the ability to reasonably operate the system across the street so that we can get some extra capacity out of it. For a while, it looked like that agreement was going to be approved. And then, while I don't think anyone on this side of the table can know exactly what happened on the other side of the table, all we heard was that there were serious issues with Holly Navarre being allowed to spray whenever they wanted to spray. And there were people that walked on the asphalt at all times of day, and they just didn't want Holly Navarre controlling it. So, at that point in time, in the interest of being completely open, Holly Navarre had already paid for the repair of the pump that pumped out of the ponds to the other side of the street. When the deal fell apart, Holly Navarre said, that's fine. All we ask is that you reimburse us for the money we spent in the repair of the pump. Holly by the Sea wrote a check to Holly Navarre Water System for that exact invoice, and we both went our separate ways. And again, never once has Holly Navarre operated the irrigation system across.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying there is no agreement that I can find in our records, I say our records, Holly by the Sea records, that indicates that after 2017, Holly Navarre Water could spray on Holly by the Sea property.
We don't have the ability to spray. You can use it or not. But to your point, there are actually two pieces of paper that stipulate, one, the ability of Holly Navarre, I think, to put water in the ponds across the street, and then a one-pager where it was agreed that Holly Navarre would install the system across the street and that Holly by the Sea had the right to take whatever the capacity was and put it across the street, subject to all the other requirements of our. Those can be provided to you if you want.
Well, I'm just saying you continue to pump to the pond. It's not like you ever stop pumping to the pond.
That is correct. Absolutely.
So there's obviously an issue here. You're continuing to pump into their pond, but you're saying it's their issue to get rid of the water.
Well, and your stipulation that Holly Navarre is using it as a rapid infiltration pond, that is the way it's essentially permitted, and that is what it's.
I pulled the permit, it doesn't show that, but it also shows in the permit that you put in there would be 40 acres to spray at Holly by the Sea. That's inaccurate as well. You also put in there's a pond on the other side of Holly by the Sea to be used as an irrigation pond. There's no ponds being used on the other side of it.
Never been built.
Yeah, but I just think it's in your permit.
Yeah, it's never been built.
I'm just relating what's in the permit and what's not, okay?
Okay. Mr. Hall, you know.
When we're going through the budget meeting over Holly by the Sea right now, right, for our next year's budget. And it just come to the attention of the board that the entryway off 399 to the golf course, that island is owned by the golf course. It's not owned by Hidden Creek Estates, it's actual property of Hidden Creek Golf. And the reason I bring this up is Holly by the Sea, for the last 4 years, has been paying a, what do you call it, landscaper, to maintain it. And we've been paying the light bill and so on and so forth. And I don't know if you guys knew it was the golf course property or not. I can't find anything, any kind of agreement between the two entities for us to maintain that, light it, and do everything else. So what I would like to, I know that it's kind of coming at you all at one time or whatever, if we cut off the maintaining the golf course's entrance, the landscape contract, is the golf course can pick that up, or it doesn't matter to me, but Holly by the Sea certainly shouldn't be maintaining property owned by the golf course.
I think the sign at that entrance says,
It does
states
say
Hidden, it
Right.
states Hidden Creek. It doesn't say, Hidden Creek, Club at Hidden Creek Golf Course. I don't know if there were any prior agreements to allow Holly by the Sea to use that.
I can't find an agreement between the entities anywhere.
The irrigation system for that is hooked up to our irrigation system, so we've been watering it all the time. Not that it's a big deal, because it's so small. That is,
But I'm just saying,
If Holly by the Sea would like to, for us to maintain that, we can maintain it, but we would maintain it to our standards, not to Holly by the Sea standards.
that's fine, it's your property.
And the sign would go and it'd be the
The
Club
sign
of
would
Hidden
say
Creek.
the Club at Hidden Creek
And
instead
that's
of
fine.
Hidden Creek Estates.
I mean,
Is that the will of the Holly by the Sea board?
well, I gotta take it back. I'm the VP North for Holly by the Sea. I was sent here to get some answers. If you guys would maintain it, if we didn't. And so on
We
and so
might
forth.
maintain it with pine straw and a sign, and, right now it's maintained with nice plants and,
Did you guys put those color changing lights on there as well, or was that just on the other entrances?
There's color changing lights on Hidden Creek, is my understanding. I don't.
The other ones they put at Sunrise, they're also there.
Yeah.
You guys paid big money to put those in there, so.
I know, I'm just, I'm sitting here to ask questions. It's not our property, you see what I'm saying? That's what we're trying.
well, maybe there should be some kind of an agreement to,
Well,
who's
Right,
gonna
proposal,
maintain.
what you'd like.
That's what I'm saying, if we can, I mean, obviously, we're open to suggestions on it, we just don't want to continue maintaining something that's not our, or
Harlan wants to be a
potentially.
good neighbor.
Hmm?
He wants to be a good neighbor.
Well, we'll let you keep maintaining it.
Well, but do you see what I'm saying? I don't want somebody to come out. The question came up. We're hiring a contractor to do that. The contractor gets hurt on that, gets hurt there, but it's not really our property type of deal. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's coming up, so I think it would be a lot cleaner if we had something on paper between us.
Yeah, we can certainly draft up a lease. I just need the board to let me know how much you want to charge for the sign on your property. Which, I mean, if they're using the property, would want to have some compensation or some discussion about who was gonna do what.
So before we go down that path and start voting about that, is there an issue with, after this meeting or next, or tomorrow, Arlen gets with our CEO
So,
and he talks with the course and those guys work out, what are we gonna do about this? And then bring a recommendation to us.
I just wanted to bring it here to the board to get direction.
that's
just illogical.
We need to know what Holly by the Sea would like to do, since they're currently maintaining it. If you'd like to have it be the nice entrance, that it is, and want to continue maintaining it, then we probably do need some kind of an agreement to that effect. If there's not one, I don't know if there's one that's buried in a file drawer somewhere.
I don't either. We can't find one. That's where the issue came up.
yeah, we've done some initial research. We were not able to locate anything. And I do have a meeting set up for this Friday with Ms. Salazar. I assume she represents I guess she's the manager of the
She's the
association.
manager of the-
To begin discussions for how the best way to resolve it.
Is it like a covenant thing?
I don't think so.
I didn't hear the question.
He asked if it was a covenant thing. Is there
Yeah.
covenant restrictions for that area? But it's
Well,
our,
the signs-
it's not
the
a-
signs.
it's our property, so, right,
Now that's no reply.
right.
Okay.
It's not being driven by covenant thing, it's
Well, that's what you're talking
came to light because of the contract. And then the fact that somebody happened to know that we didn't own it. I didn't know we didn't own it. I don't know if you guys actually knew it was the golf courses.
Basically, you pay for the contract, you pay for 4 entrances, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd be paying for 3 is what you see, you'd be dropping one, so you know how much that's gonna save you,
I do, but that's irrelevant.
okay?
It's not, I'm not here because of the dollar amount. I'm here because we're maintaining property that's not ours and potentially have a sign on property that's not ours, and what we do.
I would recommend that you allow our CEO to work with April and come up with a plan, take it for your board, and bring it to us. Figure it out, get something on paper.
That's, you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Very simple, it's not, I mean, not saying you owe me back money or that I owe you back money,
Yeah,
I just,
there you go, that's right.
I just think it'd be a lot cleaner if we had something in paper. And that way, it's something we can take to the board and talk. Thank you.
Okay. That was our last item of member forum.
I have one alibi that we didn't talk about. We talked about the Franklin project releasing it. Obviously, at some point, we're going to ask the CEO to give us the changes and how we implemented that. I'd like to ask Jeff if you can give us, after you've had a look, you might even have an image of a timeline of when you can address these back to the board that says, here's what we've done for this, here's what we've done for this, here's what we've done for. Obviously, someone's going to have to come to the board for approval for certain procedures and policies.
Yeah, we want to come up with an implementation plan, and it allows us to track it, so we're held accountable. Barbara and I have already talked about that, and
Did you have any idea in your hand?
We still have a member.
90 days?
you want to let her speak?
Sorry, she wasn't on the thing.
She did.
So,
Yeah,
you think 90, 120?
Well, so I think some of the recommendations are easy to implement and can be done quickly. Some will take longer. For instance, a revision of the purchasing policy is going to take multiple meetings with multiple groups to get that ironed out. So I think we can take each recommendation, give it like a time frame or a deadline, and keep the board apprised of that.
I just don't want it to die on.
No, I agree. We think they're good recommendations.
Appreciate that.
No, I don't. Well, I was just gonna say, if we're gonna implement some of these things, and one of them was safety or whatever, can we just roll it into that like quarterly or 6-month thing where everybody gets together and spend a day going over, looking at slideshows or something, and here's what you do if, that kind of thing? Can we do that already?
The training aspects are really one of the easier things to implement. If we can put that together pretty quick and give the staff those trainings, it's the approved policies and procedures that are going to take a little bit longer. So that's why I want to kind of break it out by item on how long it's going to take to get that implemented.
Good suggestion, Joe. Ma'am, I don't have you on our list. Can you state your name for the record? And then before you leave, if you'll sign our form sign-up sheet.
Hope Bush, 7432 Brewster Street. I want to commend y'all. I think you're doing a good job. I love the facility at Hidden Creek, and I'm asking, like, what are we doing, or is anybody doing anything to market that facility? I bring bridge groups over from Hollywood to our senior center when we don't have options there because it's a federal holiday and they close it. And the ladies there at the bar, they're wonderful to work with us. I went to the potluck last month. It was great. Loved it. What can we do to market that facility? I've lived on golf courses. It's a beautiful facility. I hate seeing it sitting there empty. Having been a former restaurant owner, 154 Cedar over in Panama City, my husband was also with Cracker Barrel. The kitchen's not the greatest setup, but Navarre needs, we all know we need a good restaurant or two. It's such a beautiful location. What can be done to market that facility?
Well, so there's a lot. That's a good question. So the golf course itself is marketed in several different tourism type publications. I don't know. Have you seen the event room renovation?
Yes.
It turned out really good, and we are planning. We're going to market that specifically. We're going to get some professional pictures of that, get the word out, and that's going to hopefully drive some more business with events, especially on the wedding side where you can make a little bit more money. We struggled a little bit with putting a restaurant in there anytime soon. I think that's something the board has discussed a lot. With the event business going relatively well and the location of that facility relative to kind of high traffic areas, I think there's some concerns about the viability of a restaurant there. It's not to say it won't ever happen, but right now we're just concerned about that as an idea. But in general, we're always looking at ways to market the facility. So
when you have a wedding, it's catered then?
that's correct.
Yes.
Okay, so the traffic,
What?
the traffic's there if you
Well-
have an event, so
They bring their own cake.
that's what I'm
Right.
saying.
So over the last couple of years, we've actually had 4 or 5 restaurateurs from the local area come look.
I know,
And every single one is turned away because of this reason or that reason. They didn't think they could, they did their market research and they said that just obviously profit margins, COVID, all that sort of stuff applied. And I think last year, $75,000 was what the event room brought. So unless a company was ready to come in and that's a baseline rent, right? So anything, that's what we'd at least be looking to get out of it. We had several approaches and everybody comes and looks, and especially when we were back on that board, and nobody came back to us. And I'm talking local restaurateurs with the experience in the business, and they didn't want to compete with their current operation, or they just said, look, it's like you said, the kitchen is not the best.
It's not.
So, the golfers would love it. That's the MGA's potluck. That's not anything to do with Hidden Creek, the board itself. So, if you know of something that wants to come in there and thrive business, because I know my wife has an event up there every month and annually, and she brings her own caterer in to do that. So yeah, love the
So
facility.
the caterer doesn't have to pay a fee, they just bring in the food and sell it to whoever.
It's part of the event
The fee is
cost.
covered by whoever rents out the room.
The room rent.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds like a
But
winner
if you
to
get
me.
with
Danielle,
Danielle, thank you.
She's great.
Yeah, she is.
she is. She's really good.
She is. So far
And
as,
a restaurateur that wants to open it, so the Clinton has some place to eat, we welcome.
wouldn't it be nice to have a steakhouse or a Cracker Barrel? Out by the sea. So that's about $6,000 a month. I think more than that on my SBA loan for my restaurant.
I mean, that was $100,000.
27 years ago. So that's not out of question.
Yeah.
We just need to market it. I talked to one restaurateur, he told me he came over here and talked to you from Fort Walton. See, it wouldn't be competition for him in Fort Walton. But he said the kitchen, and I said, yeah, the kitchen setup is lacking. It is. Would there be any help?
You have to go through the.
Yeah, we're willing to talk to anybody if they have an idea. Currently, we would look for some use of that kitchen that's complementary to the event business. We don't want to sacrifice the event business for, a restaurant that that may or may not make it. So that's the current approach, but if there's an idea, we'll look at it for sure.
Okay. All right. I just thought maybe through the Chamber of Commerce, somebody, we could locate a restaurant, a chain or something. Might be interesting.
It really hasn't been a problem getting people that want that restaurant to do business in it. What's been the problem is people will come out and look at it and say, okay, for the first year, I'm not going to pay you any rent. And do you think you can pay for half of the $100,000 worth of equipment that I'm going to buy?
That's surprising.
The last renter we had in there stiffed us for 6 months worth of rent and utilities. So it's, I'm not interested in getting any more people like we've had out there.
No, I'm talking about, a reputable, stable. If we could find them.
10 years back, we tried to open a couple times by ourselves, and that was less than optimal.
Disaster.
Yeah, no, when I first came here in 2019, we bought in Holly by the Sea. We went up there, and you're right, it was less than optimal. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All righty, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.